Over his 22-year-long career, Alonso has had many possibly great drives taken away from him by factors outside of his control. The most famous example is probably Hungary 2006. In this race, Alonso started 15th and led the race by 39 seconds by lap 23, while also lapping Michael Schumacher, with whom he was in a title fight that year. At times he was 5 seconds quicker than anyone else on the track, was about to pull off one of the greatest drives in the history of F1, until a loose wheel nut cost his retirement from this race on lap 51. Or Hungary 2009, where Alonso took a shocking pole in a dog of a car that was the Renault that year, and where he led the race until his pit stop on lap 12, where another botched pit stop by Renault caused him to retire from the lead. Or Australia 2022, where Alonso was set to take provisional pole in qualifying, which was undeniably his best shot at getting a podium that year, until an O-ring which cost $2.6 made him crash, thus stealing any chance of a podium on that particular weekend. And besides loose wheel nuts and $2 car parts, Alonso has also been involved in quite a few lap 1 incidents which were not his fault. Take Spa 2012, probably the most famous example, where Romain Grosjean caused a huge crash in the first corner, ultimately taking out Alonso in the process, which ultimately cost him the title that year. Or Spa 2018, which was almost a carbon copy of the 2012 crash, just this time Alonso was thrown flying and not Hamilton. Or Spa 2022, where Hamilton collided into Alonso in lap 1, causing one of Alonso's best radio messages of all time.
What an idiot, closing the door from the outside. I mean, we had a mega start, but this guy only knows how to drive starting first.
Did I forget any? Spa 2010. And ultimately, Alonso has also just had a lot of bad luck over the years when it comes to the performance of his car. Most infamously, there's of course the disaster that was McLaren Honda. And while he managed to pull off a lot of seemingly impossible things over the years, there was one thing that he never quite could pull off: a podium for McLaren Honda. That's not to say that he didn't have any great drives over these 3 years. In fact, Alonso was as good as ever, pulling off many masterful drives. And it's not like Alonso was never close to getting a podium with McLaren Honda. In fact, he was this close. This crash at the 2017 Singapore Grand Prix went down as one of the most famous crashes of the 21st century because of the implications this had on the title race that year, effectively eliminating Vettel from the title race and giving Hamilton the title on a silver plate, although this crash was Vettel's fault. The main protagonists in this crash were Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Räikkönen and Max Verstappen, all three retiring as a result of the crash. But there was one more unlucky protagonist who rarely gets mentioned in the context of this crash nowadays: Fernando Alonso. It's the 2017 Singapore Grand Prix. Alonso was coming off of a horrible 2015, a slightly better 2016, and again a horrible 2017 season. And that was not because Alonso didn't deliver, he always does, but his team didn't. 2017 was especially tragic in that case, because Alonso was absolutely on it that year. In Spain he qualified a spectacular 7th, behind only the Red Bulls, Mercedes and Ferraris, while his teammate qualified 19th. Or Hungary, where he pulled off his yearly Hungary Wonder Drive and finished 6th. Or Brazil, where he again qualified a spectacular 7th. Or Silverstone, where he finished Q1 and 1st, beating 2nd place Verstappen by 1.3 seconds. Or the most famous example of this being his first participants at the Indy 500, where he was in a fight for the win until he had to retire the car, which he had to do a total of 10 times that season in F1, which means that he came to the Singapore Grand Prix that year having scored only 10 points after 13 races, which put him 15th in the standings going into the 14th round of the 2017 Formula 1 season. The McLaren MCL32 was not a good car. On its day it had some pace, but its inconsistency and dreadful reliability made it the probably second worst car that year. And yet McLaren arrived in Singapore and suddenly they had pace. Alonso finished every practice session in the top 10 and qualified a strong 8th, while his teammate Stoffel van Dorn qualified 9th, giving McLaren their tight best qualifying result of the year. The hopes were high, especially regarding Alonso, and when rain and chaos came on race day, everything was set for a sensation, until this happened.
It's lights out, away we go. Verstappen gets an excellent start. Sebastian Vettel needs to cover him off. Kimi Raikkonen on the inside, and he's crashed with Verstappen. He's hit Vettel as well. Raikkonen is out before the first corner, and he's gone into the Red Bull there as well. Carnage as Fernando Alonso gets involved in the McLaren. The Toro Rosso gets to the escape road, and Fernando Alonso is out of this race, as is Kimi Raikkonen and Max Verstappen as well. It's the second time this season Raikkonen and Verstappen have collided.
Let's go through this again. Alonso has a sensational start from P8, and after the crash found himself in a mighty P3. It should have turned into P2 few corners later because of Vettel crashing out as a result of the crash, which means that he was on course to finish the first lap in second until Raikkonen said, nope. McLaren showed they had pace that weekend, and overtaking in Singapore is about as easy as telling your 80-year-old daughter that her hamster died. What if Alonso had not been involved in the crash? This could have truly been Alonso's night, and probably would have gone down as one of Alonso's best drives. Looking at the fact that Sainz finished in P4, that Hülkenberg was fighting for a podium until he had to retire the car, shows that there was a serious chance of Alonso finally stepping on a podium again after 3 years. Also, Van Dorn finished in P7, so the pace was real. Sure, this was only the first lap and a lot could have happened in the remaining laps, but if anyone could have pulled it off, it's Alonso. He did it so often before. Alonso himself even said later that he could have won this race. Now, while this might be a bit far-fetched, I don't really see him finishing ahead of Hamilton or Ricciardo. There was a chance to slot in just behind them and finish on a podium. In fact, it was the best chance of his entire second McLaren stint. And who knows how history would have changed in that scenario. Maybe this would have caused a butterfly effect with Honda staying with McLaren and turning the tides around and getting back to the top. It's unlikely, but you will never know. The 2017 season was notorious for being dominated by the big three teams of modern F1, Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari. In fact, only one driver who didn't drive for either of these teams managed to get on a podium that year, which was Lance Stroll at the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But it could have been two. Alonso could have scored a podium in his second worst car, which seemingly was only reserved for the top 3 teams that year. And it should not have happened. And maybe that's why it didn't happen. Maybe some things are not supposed to happen. Maybe Alonso was not supposed to get a podium for McLaren. Maybe Alonso was not supposed to win the Indy 500 on his first try, and maybe Alonso was not supposed to win a title for Ferrari in the 4th best car in 2012.